Well, welcome back, everyone. Today I'm honored to be joined by Mr. James Setters. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. We'll dive right in. You were a professional racer for 6 years, and you've been racing for about 17
hmm
in sprint car racing. So, how'd you get into that?
I was kind of born into it. My dad, he raced for like his whole life, or was around racing. He raced for a couple of years, and so when I was born, I was just put straight to the track. I got to see all my friends racing, and all the people that I idolized were racing. I got to sit in a couple of sprint cars, and I was like, "This is what I want to do." And then when I was 3, my dad was like, "This is what I don't want him to do." So we moved to Idaho, far away from any racetrack. And then I was like, Dad, can we build a cart, like a go-kart? And he was like, okay, we can build a go-kart. And so we built a track and a go-kart in the backyard and started racing that. And he was like, oh, he's actually pretty good. And I was like, can I race other people? And so at 4.5, we went over to Salem, Oregon. I think it was about an 8-hour drive. And we raced, I don't know how many races in a year. But yeah, started racing then, did really good. Was usually top 3 and winning like all my races, and just kept going from there. So the thing that I would do was get in a new car, kind of feel it out for a year, win a couple of races, and then the next year I would usually clean out like the whole division, like beat everybody, and then I'd move up. And because I started so young, I was always the youngest in every division that I raced in. And eventually, after 10 years of that, I was finally ready to race sprint cars, which is slap a V8 into a really light chassis that was made by some rednecks and go race around dirt. And yeah, super fun, fast, and dangerous.
Yeah. So,
So
then sprint kart distinguishes itself from go-karting in that it's just a larger engine. Is that correct?
yeah, so go karts have one cylinder, and then there's intermediate classes in between go karts and sprint cars. But yeah, go karts are just one cylinder, dirt bike engines or snowblower engines, and then sprint cars are like a full on V8.
Got it. So,
So
I would assume you go a lot faster.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
And it's on dirt.
hmm
Is there anything? Why'd you choose sprint car racing as opposed to like rally car racing, go kart racing,
I
something like
actually did
that?
some rally car racing.
Oh, you did.
Yeah,
How
I
was
got
that?
one race in rally car. Somebody saw me racing sprint cars out at the track owner actually, and he called me up one day when I was sitting in calculus, and he was like, "Yo, can you get over to Montana this weekend to race my rally car?" Because they were going to Florida, and I was like, "Yeah, I can make it." So I just skipped school and went rally car racing. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like sprint cars more. They're such a unique car to drive. They have a giant wing on the top,
Yeah.
and so for about half the corner, you're not running the track, you're racing the air. And so, like, the traction that you get doesn't come from the track, it's the wing catching the air, turning the car, and setting into the corner.
Interesting.
Um, yeah, it's just a really unique car to drive. And I think I was just drawn to it because I've been around it my whole life. So,
Yeah. How was your experience with rally car racing? Did you
oh,
enjoy it?
yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Would you
Yeah.
do that again?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And you build these yourself. Is that correct?
Yeah, the rally car, they didn't, but the sprint cars, you order the chassis. We had somebody do the engine, and then you assemble them all in your shop and hope you put everything together right.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And as far as the preparation for the races,
Mhm.
is there any physical or mental preparation you have to do to?
Uh, I didn't really do too much of that. I mean, I would run stairs just to keep my cardio in shape and do a little bit of reflex training. But yeah, there's like barely any practice. Even if you want to practice in those cars, you might get like one day in a season where the track owners open up the track to practice, but they just throw you right into races.
Interesting.
Yeah. So starting out, you're just running a full race with people who know what they're doing, and you just got to figure it out and not crash this really expensive car.
Why are they not opening the track?
Just a lot of I don't know, a lot of legal reasons. Like you have to get ambulances out there, and like
That makes
yeah.
sense. Yeah.
So if you want to make money, then you just open it up one day for practice to make sure your drivers aren't going to crash a bunch, and then once you have fans there to watch, they don't want to watch practice. They want to watch races.
Yeah.
And so the fans pay for all the safety. So
Interesting. Okay,
yeah.
got it. And how long are these races?
The main event is about 7 to 20 minutes. It's real quick.
Okay.
But the whole race day takes about 2 to 3 hours.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it's not that long.
Yeah. It
And
starts
it's
out with hot laps, which is you get one. It's kind of a practice lap, just getting heat in the engine. And then you have a heat race, which is smaller groups of cars, and you race against them, and that lines you up for the main event. And then the main event's a longer race with a bunch more cars that you get money for winning.
there you go. Yeah. What was the danger scale in it, and did you make preparation allowances? How much of a concern was that?
So the safety gear's gotten a lot better over the recent years. It used to be like I don't know, 1 in 5 people would die.
Oh wow, that's not great. Is it?
Yeah, but now I think it's safer death-wise than driving a car, but injury-wise, it's not. I've broken 3 vertebrae, got a bunch of concussions. I've known people who have been impaled in a bunch of different spots. Uh, but yeah, as far as dying, people still die about every year, but it's not as much as it used to be.
Yeah. What they do to minimize that risk?
So full fireproof suit, fireproof underwear, just fireproof everything. Got really nice helmets. They have a Hans device, which came out after Dale Earnhardt died.
Okay.
So that it hooks to your helmet and it kind of acts like an airbag. So when you hit, it takes the force away from your head and puts it back into the seat. And so your head slowly comes to a stop. And when they first implemented that, race car drivers hated it because they were awake for the crashes. And they were like, this is so much scarier because we can see everything that's happening now.
Yeah.
Because usually they just get knocked out because the initial impact.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. As far as impaling goes, how do you end up getting impaled driving a race car?
Just when you crash, there's a lot of really long metal arms to like control steering, or there's the pedals are just a solid piece of metal like a rod. And so I've heard of somebody who got impaled uh, through their heel with the brake pedal. And then one of my friends, he got impaled. They don't know what went through him, but something went into him and then went out, and they couldn't find it.
Huh.
But yeah, just miscellaneous stuff.
So there's not a lot of protection. There's not a lot of safety padding, as it were, around the cockpit.
No, so you're just sitting in a fully contained seat. Some people have padding, some people don't. Uh, I used to have a lot of padding, but padding can also lead to worse injuries in some areas. So I had a lot of padding that I would sit on just to make it more comfortable. And then I got hit by a guy, and they popped the back end of my car up. And then when I came down to land, all the padding compressed, and it just broke my back.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
then, after that, we just had a little bit of padding around my ribs to get the seat to fit a little bit better. But other than that, it's just basically bare metal.
No, it doesn't seem like a fire protection suit would cause less impaling injuries.
No.
How have they minimized that risk? Have they, or are they just kind of running with it?
There's one thing that they did. So there's a really long, probably 4 or 5 feet long steering arm that connects your steering box to the wheel. And that one actually killed a guy when it impaled him. So they switched that out with a steel steering arm. Like, it's mandatory, you have to have a steel steering arm. And they tied a rope to it, so it sticks to the car better.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. And as far as like how much collision is in every race, is it like once you get hit, you're out, right?
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay.
You can get hit and keep racing. I got hit in a heat race. Car looked fine, so we went out for the main. That one I actually didn't finish the main because it did some damage that we couldn't see. But yeah, you can definitely get hit and keep going. Just you have to get hit in the right spot and get lucky.
How much collision is there?
Collision probably not super often. Probably once every 3-ish races you touch somebody, and then like really bad crashes, like totaling a car, probably once or twice a season for some guys. Some guys are a lot more, but
Yeah, because you're all in a pack. How many
Yeah.
cars race at once?
for mains about 20-ish.
Okay.
If it's a really big show, they might go up to 25 or 30, but
Did you ever take into consideration, were you ever in a spot where you were like, hey, I might die here?
Oh yeah, for sure. I was at Skagit Motor Speedway, and so once you run a track a bunch, the moisture kind of goes out of the track, and it gets really slick. So you can't go as fast. But after it's been slick for a really long time, the track heats up and it starts ripping or it doesn't heat up. It just starts ripping the rubber off of your tires, and that gives you a ton of grip, and you can just pretty much go all out and push your engine to the limit. So I was in a race where the track had did that, and so I was just full throttle the whole time, going all out, about 110 at the end of the straightaways. And in front of me, this one guy tried passing another guy, and he slid up and hit him, and they were both going to crash into the wall. And I couldn't go underneath them just because of how fast I was going and all the momentum that I had. So I hit them at the wall at the same time, going 110. And I remember looking at the wall, and I was like, I'm going to die. Because if a wall's coming at you at 110 miles an hour, your brain's not like, oh, the safety gear is gonna work. It's like, no, this is it.
This is it.
Yeah, and that one I hit so hard that I got just knocked out cold, even with the Hans device. And I came to, I saw stars and everything, and I came to, and it ripped the engine part way out of the car off of this like 1/2-inch steel mounting plate, ripped the grade 8 bolts out of my seat, and anyway, it was sitting there just full throttle, which is really bad for the engine. And so there's a kill switch like right here. And I was like, all I got to do is flip that kill switch. And so I was like, arm, flip the kill switch. And it didn't work. And I was like, what? Like I couldn't move anything. And after 5 to 10 seconds, I was finally able to barely lift my arm and flip it off. But yeah, that was a bad one.
Wow. Yeah, how did you survive that? Because hitting a wall at 110 is life-threatening for anyone.
Yeah, just speaks to the safety gear that we have. It's really good. We got a 5-point harness, so you're strapped in really good. You got the Hans device and the helmet, so you can survive like hard on impacts. The ones that people don't survive are the ones where they get launched way up in the air and then come down.
That makes sense.
Yeah, because all the safety gear was designed to hit a wall going at top speed, and so it's built to survive, but the ones that kill people are going against what the designs are for.
Did you ever have anything like that?
Yeah, I went up, or actually two. One of them I didn't get injured. One of them, a guy hit me, popped the back end of my car up, bottomed out the frame rail on the track, and broke 3 vertebrae right in here. And then the other one, we got a new car, and I had somebody test it for me, my teammate. And she was like, oh, it's good. It's good. I tested it. It works great. And I was like, all right. And we were in, I think, a heat race, and I was going to pass her. And I was going on the inside, and I run cars way harder than she does. And that one was passing her, and then the back axle snapped. And when those snap, you don't have any shock absorption because all the shock absorption goes through the axle. And I just got lucky on that one. It rolled and I landed on top of the wall, so I didn't come down super hard. But
yeah.
I've seen a guy break his neck doing that. His back axle broke, and they got the ambulance. He broke a bunch of vertebrae in his neck.
What are you thinking about when you're, like, flipping in the middle of a race as your back axle is snapped?
Just dang it, I could have made the pass. Like, if that didn't break, I could have made the pass for that one. But usually it's like I make a mistake or something stupid happens, and I'm like, that sucks. I'm not winning anymore. I can't finish the race. So
did your parents or now your fiance ever be like, hey, we got to calm down on this because this seems life-threatening on a somewhat daily basis?
Yeah, not really. My dad was always super into it, and he understood, like, the adrenaline that you get from it, and, like, it's an experience unlike anything else. Like, I'm sure those base jumpers, like, there's a reason they don't stop. And so both my mom and my dad got that. And then when I met my fiance, I was still racing, and I just described it to her. I was like, imagine if you could do, because she's really into art. I was like, imagine if you could only do art a couple times a year, and it was the best feeling ever. And she was like, okay.
But there was like a 20% chance you died.
Yeah, not anymore. But yeah, used to be 20%.
Used to be 20%.
Or at least in F1 or Indy cars.
Yeah.
So
Would you ever consider going into a different genre of racing?
Oh yeah, yeah. Once I get some money, I'm gonna go to midgets. They're a smaller version of a sprint car with 4 cylinders, and they don't have a wing. The wing kind of makes it a lot safer, but midgets are a lot cheaper, and so
Hmm.
gonna go back to those. But
What was the most difficult race or track that you raced on?
I'd have to say Skagit. It was a track over in Washington, and that was the one where I crashed at a bunch. That one had a steel wall on the inside and outside of the track, really tight and super aggressive racers because it's kind of like a famous track in the sprint car racing world, so a lot of people would come out and race there, and that was probably the most difficult one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just because it was narrow and tight in there.
Yeah, just narrow, tight. The track, it's called lipping up. It's when the moisture gets pushed to the outside and then it builds like a wall, and it's like a 1 to 2 foot wall of just mud that you have to run, and those are super hard to run. And if you make a mistake, then you crash, like I did on DirecTV that one time. It was my first time on TV, and I crashed.
That's awkward.
Yeah, but yeah, that track it's just a difficult track, and it has super aggressive racers, but it's super fun. I love it still.
Yeah. What factor does weather play into how you race?
Uh, Quite a bit. It doesn't affect the drivers really. It just affects the track, and so I guess you have to drive the track different. But I raced out in Montana a lot of the time, and there it's super dry, super hot in the summers, and very little rain. So the tracks are really slick, no moisture, and they usually go rubber down. Um, and then over on the west coast near like Oregon and Washington, those tracks get a lot of rain, really heavy, and a lot rougher. So it just kind of affects the track, not too much how you drive. And then
Yeah.
of course it can just rain out, which is you can't race if it's raining.
Right.
So
That makes sense. And how do you make incremental improvements on the car? So are you constantly adjusting it and fine tuning it?
so you can adjust shocks, springs, air pressure. You can adjust wings. There's tons of tiny adjustments that you can make. I was always terrible at that. My dad, he was really good at being a crew chief and adjusting the car and stuff. But yeah, you make tons of adjustments.
Do you make adjustments per race, per track?
Yeah, so I can't even give you an example because I don't even know what air pressures to do. I'm honestly the worst at setting cars up. But like if the track was heavier, you would loosen the car up to where you can not have to steer as much. So make it to where it slides easier. Give it more stagger, or change the shocks to where it doesn't dig in as much. And then if the track's looser, like slick and no moisture in it, then you would tighten the car up to where it sticks to the track as much as you can get it to.
Yeah.
So.
This is a crazy thing that you just voluntarily do. Like I cannot imagine purposefully getting out there and doing like hitting a wall at 110 miles an hour sounds like it would kill you,
Yeah.
kind of regardless of what happens. Yeah.
A lot of people get like PTSD or shell shock from it. Not really, but they get way more timid while racing. So like my old teammate, she was like the hardest racer I'd ever seen, like running the cushion just like me, like the crazy people. And then she crashed a few times, and after you go through that, people get a lot more timid of the cushion or running the top of the track, and so they slow down and run the bottom more.
Did you ever do that?
I crashed a ton of times, but I never got it in my head to stop doing that. I remember one race, I was leading by like a half a lap, and I was like on the verge of crashing several times. My whole team was like freaking out because every other lap I'd send it into the cushion and be like a couple inches off the wall going 100 miles an hour and just barely make it out of the corner. And they were like, chill, chill out. Just like you were a half a lap ahead. I remember the interviewer, he came to me and he was like, why were you driving so hard? You know, you were like a half a lap ahead. And I was like, I was? I thought they were like right there.
That's funny. Yeah. Why'd you stop?
I just didn't make it. I had a NASCAR team looking at me when I was 13. They had a young drivers program where they picked 7 kids out of Canada, Mexico, and America, and they were just like prodigy kids that they were going to try and get on their team. I was the youngest and only one off of dirt, and then they gave me a bunch of advice. They said go on to asphalt, so I got a win on asphalt. Said just keep doing the track, or keep on track for dirt. And so I got a couple of wins there. And then in 2019, we went down to Florida to talk to them. And they were like, yeah, if you prove yourself this season, or this upcoming season, we'll get you in some sort of a car. And then we talked to a sponsor, and they were like, oh, yeah, we'll bankroll you. We'll give you big old sponsorship. Just put our sticker on your car. And I was like, sweet. And that year was 2020. So I won 5 out of the 6 races I was in, but they were really small local races that nobody cared about. And
Shoot.
yeah. So then I had to go to college. I raced a little bit more, but not as much as they were looking for. Just yeah. So
Yeah.
just
Is
didn't
the
work
plan to go back to that at some point?
out. Probably not. Like my NASCAR dreams are over, but racing's fun, so I'll definitely go back to racing at one point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you also hunt bears with your cousins and
Yeah.
hounds.
Oh wait, one more story.
Go ahead.
It was the first time a guy was looking at me and wanted me on his team. I think I was 15 or 16, and I didn't do hardly anything in racing at that point. Like I was still new. Like I got rookie of the year, but that was about it. And he saw me race and he was like, I want that kid on my team. And so he got me in a car, and I was sitting waiting for hot laps. That was the first time I'd ever been in that car. And he was like, this is a new car. You're a new driver. Just take it easy and, just get a feel for the car. And so he went up and stood in turn 2. So the way that the tracks work, it's an oval. And the entry to the corner we call 1, and then it's 2, 3, and 4 for each turn. And so he was standing over in turn 2, and they threw the green, and I was like, I'm not going to take it easy. That's dumb. So I gassed it up, full throttle, sent it into the corner. But the track was slimy, and so after I got to the center of the corner, I started sliding up the track out of control, and I could see him standing at the wall where I was going to hit. And right before I got there, like 3 feet before, I gassed it up, turned the car, sparked the bumper off the wall right in front of him, and then took off. And I got back into the pits, and he was like, I knew you were the one. Like, that was awesome. And went on to win 4 out of 5 championships for him.
Wow.
So
What's the sponsorship like in sprint car racing? Is it lucrative like NASCAR? I've not heard of sprint racing, so
yeah, it's less lucrative than NASCAR. So usually businesses will come to you. Like we had Floors and More, just a local company out of Great Falls. They came to us and they were like, "You always win. You're in victory lane. We want our sticker on your car." And so they'll just pay us for. They'll either give us a straight up amount, just here's X amount of dollars, or they'll pay for all our gas or tires or something like that. And then you just mention them in interviews and have their sticker on your car.
got it.
So some are smaller than others. Like we had all our shocks sponsored by Slade. For teams, that one is just somebody owns the team, and then you race their car, so you don't have to pay for much. I think we had to pay for gas and tires, but that was about it.
Got it.
And
Yeah.
yes.
As far as the V8 engines, do they ever is there too fast?
No.
There isn't.
I think a couple of guys in the 410s, that's the class above ours, they're about 1,000 horsepower. They were getting up close to too fast for some drivers. But then again, some drivers could handle it. So it's just a driver preference thing. For me, no.
No. As fast as you can.
Yeah, as fast as I can.
Yeah. You hunt bears.
Mhm.
What kind of bear do you hunt?
Black bear.
Okay.
Yeah. With my cousin, he's been running hounds since he was 9. And I think he's 85 or 86 now. And still goes out hunting almost every week. And so I hunt with him as much as I can. I got 2 bears so far. One of them's on my wall. The other one's in my freezer. And yeah, it's a good time.
Yeah. What do you hunt with?
30-30 lever action, no scope.
Okay, so it's not bow hunting or anything like that.
No.
Yeah. Where do you hunt these things?
North Idaho.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that you could hunt bear there.
You can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Great.
fun.
From April to, I think, late summer. And then you can hunt fall bear, too.
Okay,
So.
interesting. Why black bear?
Just what he hunts. He likes hunting black bear. I think grizzlies kill dogs, so he doesn't go after those that much. But he's run into a few grizzlies that have killed some of his dogs.
And grizzly and black bears don't kill dogs?
They do, but just less.
Yeah.
They're a smaller bear, and they usually just run up trees.
Got it. And I would assume he trains the hounds, correct?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So to train him, he just has old dogs that run bear, and he doesn't do anything except for just let the young dogs run with him, and then they just pick it up, and they're like, "Oh, this is what I'm supposed to do," because they've been bred for that for 80 years.
Yeah.
So.
I was gonna ask, is there like when he's picking out hounds, is there something he's looking for, some sort of qualification that will tell him this is a good dog to have?
Yeah, he likes them really aggressive. A lot of hound hunters just want him to follow the bear and be really good at sniffing out trails and following trails. He just has better luck with having really aggressive dogs, and it's served him well because now that there's less bear because there's more hunters, his dogs are super aggressive, and so they get more bear.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny when describing them because everybody thinks that they're just vicious killers, and then you meet them in camp and they're just like the sweetest, dumbest dogs ever until they see a bear.
And then they go berserk.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the protocol when they find a bear?
So we let them out of the truck. Well, they bark on the truck, and then we let them out. They trail it, and then we just follow them with GPS collars. And then once they've treed or driven it into a cave, we just run up to it, and 90% of the time we just look at it because it's just what the dogs love to do, and so we're just letting them get exercise and like looking at the bear. And then every now and then he takes one. So like I took one in the spring earlier this year, and he took one. I think he took a fall bear, but yeah, usually we don't shoot them. We just look at them, take pictures.
Are the spring bear or the fall bear better?
Depends on preference. I like fall bears better just because they got a bunch more fat on them, so you can get a lot more food from them. Like you can just break down the fat and use it for cooking. But a lot of people like spring bear because they have a more neutral taste. It doesn't depend as much on what the bear was eating. So if they got into a blackberry patch, like that's awesome, and you want that meat. But sometimes they're like scavenging, and so their meat doesn't taste as good. So it's more variable with the fall bear and more kind of consistent with spring bears.
Yeah.
Because they were just surviving off of fat. So.
Right. And the hounds, you just what kind of dogs are these?
Plot hounds.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it. And you'll just send them off several miles into the forest to find a bear. They smell it from the road, though?
Yeah, so a bear will just be wandering around the woods and cross a road, and then if they've crossed it in the past like 12 to 24 or sometimes older, if they've crossed it recently, then the dogs can pick it up and then they follow it.
Got it. And they'll chase them for several miles, and then you will, like, do you always go up and check out the bear, and then, yeah, how do you get the dogs off of it?
It's a pain because they don't want to go. You just hook collars up to them, and what I do is I just throw them on my shoulders, or if I'm pulling a bunch, I just pull them off. After you get them out of eyesight of the bear, they realize, like, oh, we've done our job, and then they turn back and start headed toward the truck. But yeah, it's a pain for the first couple 100 yards.
Do the dogs ever try to kill the bear?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
They can't, but they try.
Yeah. I would assume you've lost dogs from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one last year, I want to say it was Deb. One of his dogs. He was all beat up about it, and because it's like his dog. He's like, ah. So
Shoot.
he cut hunting short a little bit that season, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Has there ever been a moment where you were hunting a bear and you realized, we've bitten off more we could chew here?
For him, I don't think so. But for me, the first time I went hunting with him alone, I think I was 16, or just with me, because usually I went with family. And we drove a bear into a cave. And I'm real short, and I do ultramarathons, so I always get to the bear first. And usually they're up a tree, and you just look at them, and they're pretty chill. But this one, we drove it into its den. And so I was like, oh, I don't know what to do here. And then Doug, my cousin, he got up and he was like, all right, James, what I need you to do is crawl into the bear's den and get the dogs out of there. And I had a 9mm on me, but I was like, that's dumb. No, I'm not going to crawl into a bear's cave. And he was like, oh, you're a pussy. And he didn't have anything on him, like no weapons at all, and maybe like a small pocket knife. And 80 some odd years old, and he just crawled right into the bear's den, got the dogs out, and threw them to me. And he was like, you get to bring them back to the truck.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Yeah. So that was probably the only time I thought I bit off more than I could chew. But yeah, I don't think he's ever thought that.
He didn't, and like, he did not see this as a safety hazard that he
No.
was crawling into a bear's den.
He's gotten run over by a bear once.
Really?
Yeah, doing that exact thing. He crawled into a bear's den to get the dogs out, and then the bear just ran right over him.
Are bears generally more docile than we see them as?
Yeah, I would say so. Like, this one of his buddies got attacked recently, but he was kind of messing with it. What he would do to get his dogs like really into shape is they would tree the bear, and then he would shoot it with a slingshot until the bear ran out of the tree. And usually they just run out, but this one turned toward him and was like, "Don't shoot me," and just attacked him. But you can usually tell when they're like pissed, and you got to shoot them. They put their ears back and they just like death stare at some person in the party. They just pick one person that they're like, that one is the one I'm gonna attack.
Yeah.
But I've never seen that happen, and I've
Yeah.
been to a bunch of trees, but
It
does
seems
happen.
like a last resort for them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like if they think they're gonna die, then they're like, oh, I'm just
And
gonna
I'd
fight.
assume that's different for grizzlies because they're probably a little more ready to kill everything.
Yeah, I haven't actually been around that many grizzlies, so. But yeah, I think they're more ready.
Yeah. What's the worst bear hunt you've been on?
Oh, they're all fun. Most miserable. Yeah, I don't know. The longest one, we treed a couple. There was a bunch of people, and we went to a bunch of different trees that day. Yeah, but most miserable are.
Yeah. Do you have a
They're all
best
fun.
bear hunt?
Probably when I got my bear recently. That was pretty fun. Just about a mile off the road. I had just run a marathon, so I was pretty sore. And then walked down into the canyon, shot it right between the eyes, skinned it out, and packed it out on my back. So that was
Yeah.
pretty fun. But
How much meat is it?
that one I got about, I didn't weigh it, probably 50 to 70 pounds, somewhere in there.
Okay, so not terrible.
No, I killed a pretty small bear. I didn't rug it or anything.
Yeah. You run ultra marathons,
Yeah.
and normal marathons. What's the mental preparation like for that?
Just a lot of running. I did cross country in high school. I never really had a problem with running. Like, it was just a fun kind of meditative experience. So for that one, I just ran a bunch out in the woods. I'm sure some people around here think I'm crazy because they were out hiking. There's just this old couple, and I run in barefoot shoes and usually without a shirt and like no food or water or anything. And they were sitting by a creek side, and I ran out of the woods, dove headfirst into the creek, took a bunch of gulps of water, and then went off the other way. And the old dude was like, awesome. But yeah, I don't think the wife liked it that much.
Why no shirt?
I don't know, just get sun,
Yeah.
condition my body a little bit more.
And the barefoot shoes. Seems like an odd choice. My brother's a cross country runner. He
Yeah.
is very particular about his shoes, and they've got to have the right cushion. Barefoot shoes seem like a little more of a live and let live style. Why'd you go for that?
I just wanted to strengthen my feet. I'm in the woods a bunch, and I don't like pick out like any unique shoes for those. I just wear whatever I have on. So I have barefoot ones on right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just wanted to strengthen my feet, and it worked. I went to a physical therapist for one of my injuries, and they were like, "Wow, your feet are like amazing. They're like in perfect shape." But yeah, I used to run with really cushy, high-heeled shoes, but uh, I would heel strike a lot more in those, and that's like bad for your knees and hips and
Yeah,
all
yeah,
that. So
yeah. Why no food or water?
conditioning again. So I take the philosophy of like train hard, and then on race day, do everything perfect. And so if I was going out for like an 18-mile run, I would eat just a normal dinner, like kind of low carb, sleep the whole night, and then probably eat like one apple and drink a little bit of water, and then do an 18-mile run. Because I figure like if I can do that, then when I have a big giant spaghetti dinner at night and then take all my sugar water drinks, like it's gonna hit a lot harder. So
Yeah, it's gonna make life easier.
yeah, and it
How?
did.
Go ahead.
Oh, I said, and it did.
Yeah,
It hit like nitrous when I would take. There's this. I think it's fuel. It's like a carbohydrate mix you can put in water, and that stuff is crazy.
yeah. How far do you run with ultramarathons?
The one I did was on the Hiawatha. That one was 31.2 miles.
Okay.
And yeah, I haven't done anything longer than that, but
Yeah. As far as your approach to pain management, especially that kind of long, continuous pain for marathons, how do you handle that?
I used to just ignore it, and then I got injured a bunch. So now I'm actually taking care of it and listening to when my body is in pain. But yeah, I would. I had shin splints like the whole time I was training, and I was like, they're fine. And I'd go to physical therapy and just have them work on it to maintain or to make it to where I could run. But yeah, I just ignored it.
Ignored it for the most
Yeah.
part.
So during the races, I just run as much as my body will allow, and like it definitely sucks. The ultra marathon sucked so hard. That was the worst. But yeah, it's I don't know. I have a pretty high pain tolerance. So.
Yeah. What is the importance of pain as you're kind of experiencing it on a somewhat daily level, running these things?
Philosophically, I think it's like essential just because it gives me contrast. So like with food, if I do an 18-mile run with no food and then I eat something, like I feel what it's doing, and like mentally for me, putting myself through that much pain and then coming out the other side, I'm like I appreciate everything. Like I'll be brushing my teeth and I'm like, oh, this is the best. Like this feels so good, and I wouldn't have appreciated that before. And so I think in that sense, that's what I kind of use pain for. That's why I do a lot of things that put myself in pain, just so I can feel the contrast and like get higher highs.
What are its limitations?
Like, what do you mean?
As far as what can pain not help you or teach you?
I don't know. Pain not teach me math.
Speaking of math, you're getting a degree in mechanical engineering, and you've done a bit with 3D printing.
Yeah.
A lot of people think 3D printing could be the path to the future. Do you see what potentialities do you see for 3D printing in the coming years?
I think there's a lot of fields that 3D printing can take over. One it's already taken over is rapid prototyping. So, like just making small plastic parts. Like I think I 3D print stuff about every day. Just like useful parts for small machines. As far as replacing plastic production, I don't think it can do that. Just injection molding is too good. But we're trying to use it to 3D print houses. And I think for that, there's definitely a market for it. In Texas, there's now a whole subdivision that's 3D printed out of concrete, and architects are loving it because you don't need like rigid 90-degree angles like you do with 2x4s.
Right.
Like it's really hard to make a curve with a 2x4 and framing. So for that, like custom houses, it's really nice, and we're trying to do it with wood, so it's more sustainable.
Talk to me how you're 3D printing with wood, because obviously it's not just 2x4s.
Yeah. So do you know how 3D printing works?
Yeah,
Okay.
roughly.
What about resin 3D printing?
I've seen something like that, but not fully
Yeah.
knowledgeable in that.
So with resin 3D printing, you have a liquid, and then you shoot like a little laser at it, and it cures the liquid, and it hardens, and you can just repeat that into a shape.
Mm-hmm.
So we're kind of mixing the basic 3D printing of like pushing a solid, heating it up, and turning it into liquid, and then pushing a solid out. We're mixing that with resin 3D printing. So we take sawdust from making those 2x4s that is just waste sawdust, and mix it with sodium silicate, which is just resin. It's just liquid glass, and it kind of makes like a just wet sawdust mixture. And then we push that out, and it can support itself just on its own, and then it hardens into a wall or a panel. Or uh, I did a bunch of research on just compression samples about that big, but so
Yeah.
yeah.
Is there any longevity concerns with something like that?
That was what my research was about, because we didn't know what would happen if you aged it or left it out in like Florida weather. So over the summer, I got a grant to do some research on that, and it is so bad right now. It's it doesn't hold up to water at all. Heat, it's pretty good, and with UV light, so like the sunlight, it's pretty good. But our main concern now is water, because the resin that we use dissolves in water real easily, and so we're trying to fix that. Because
Yeah, it's
yeah,
not ideal.
yeah, you don't want your house just dissolving.
How are you going about fixing that?
So I added. I just talked to some chemists, and I was like, "What is happening chemically here?" And they were like, "Well, the resin cures and has it makes 3D networks of silica inside the wood." And I was like, "Okay, if I increase those, then would it make it water resistant?" And they were like, "Yeah, if you could increase them enough, it'd make it water resistant." So I added metakaolin, which is it's used in concrete and pottery. It's just it's like a white aluminum powder, and it's real cheap. And so I added that to some samples, and it did make it slightly more water resistant, but still not enough.
Not enough.
So another treatment that they're working on is acid treating them. That gets it to where they can be put in water and maintain their shape, but they still lose a lot of strength. So getting closer. Just there's just tons of different methods that we're trying.
Yeah. And is the goal to eventually 3D print all houses?
Probably not all, but when you're making a 2x4 to build a house, there's a lot of waste that comes off of that 2x4, like making squares out of circular trees. And so if we can take that waste and use it, then we can make more houses, or like low income housing or stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then the concrete ones, I don't think they're replacing all houses either, but they're making like specialty houses. So if you want really intricate like architectural work, like curves and like a flowing house, then you can use concrete 3D printing for that.
Yeah. It feels like those things, without a frame to support it,
Mhm.
it would seem that it is liable to fall apart more easily. Is that correct?
The concrete ones, no, and I think ours. We haven't made a full scale wall, but we've made some tiny walls, and they seem really rigid. And there's been a bunch of testing done on those. Um, it's kind of like plastic. Like if you have a plastic beam, you could make a structure that can support itself. But then if you 3D print that same structure, it can also support itself. Like if it's all bound to each other in one structure,
Yeah.
then you might have to change the design a little, but you could still get a structure that supports itself.
Is it brittle?
Yeah, a little bit. It's you ever feel particle board?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like that,
Okay.
similar to that.
Interesting.
Mhm.
That doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't feel, especially for a place like Florida or somewhere where there's earthquakes or other natural disasters. That doesn't feel like it would be
Yeah.
an optimized way of printing houses yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the military was actually looking at our current setup, or I don't know if they were looking at it or if we were thinking they could use it, but for temporary housing, like out in a desert, because you can put up a structure really quick and then just spray it with a hose and just have it dissolve. And so if you like in a military application, if they needed it for like, oh, we need to set up base here for like a week or a month, then they could just print a structure really fast, live out of that, and then at the end just spray it. and have it dissolve into the desert.
How would they print a house out in the middle of the desert with limited resources?
You just get one piece of machinery. We have a gantry system that we're working on. That's one of the things that I've been working on a lot. It's just a big 3D printer scaled up, about the height of this room, and you just have a robot arm on the end of that, and a little mixer mixing the sodium silicate in the wood, and then it just pushes it through a hose to that robot arm, and then the robot arm traces out a house.
Got it. But that feels like something that would be a bit of a difficult process to bring that out to a military, like in the middle of Afghanistan or something like that.
Yeah.
That'd be quite difficult to set that up, right? Or is it a
It'd just be
somewhat
like-
easy process?
It'd be the same as getting like a backhoe out there.
Okay.
So like if you're not on the front lines, like a little bit off of the front lines, and you can ship stuff there like people and equipment, then it would just be one extra piece of equipment that you'd have to put there.
Got it. Yeah. Are there downsides other than the potential that if you have a flood, it's just going to not exist anymore?
Yeah.
Are there other downsides to a 3D house?
So we don't know the full extent of it because the walls, we haven't done any health testing on them yet, like how it affects people. Like we know that all the ingredients are inert, but like long-term effects of the resin on people. So that I guess is a concern, but no, I guess there's nothing that we found that would be a downside other than floods.
Other than the water. Yeah. Where do you see 3D printing going in the next 20 years?
I think it'll just keep advancing. I think the metal 3D printing industry will get a lot bigger just because you can make parts with metal 3D printing that you can't make with CNC machines or like mills or lathes. And so I think there'll definitely be a big market for that. Plastic 3D printing, I think that's probably where it's going to stay. Like, I don't think it's going to have any more. I don't think it's going to take over any more industries other than just rapid prototyping. And then large scale 3D printing, I don't know if it'll get there in the next 20 years for like printing a house with wood, but I think concrete houses will become more popular, like 3D printing those.
Got it. It like a 3D printed house seems more less reliable than a regular house, just because maybe it's just this is a new thing that we're trying, but it is, first of all, untested over the course of like 100 years, and also usually things that are one part are a little less anti-fragile.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
So for the wood one, we don't know yet just because there, again, haven't been long-term studies. But I think for the concrete one, it's kind of like those like concrete apartment buildings that are just like a big giant block of concrete. I don't think it's any less reliable than those, and those are built pretty good.
Yeah. Do you see a point in which, well, actually, we'll talk about metal 3D printing.
Yeah.
How is that done? Obviously, we're not melting steel and putting it through a 3D printer.
So for that one, they have a bed of metal powder, and then they shoot a laser into the powder, and it melts the metal into in a specific spot, and then you just stack those melts on top of each other.
Got it. And that is more reliable or the same amount reliable as something like a CNC or a lathe?
I think they're the same, yeah.
Okay.
Except you can get different geometries that you can't get with a
a lathe especially. Yeah, that makes sense. Do you think at some point we will get to the point where most things are 3D printed?
I don't think so, just because injection molding is so good. So with injection molding, you just have a mold of your part, and then you just shoot plastic into it, and you can make a foot long piece of plastic in a couple seconds, if that. Whereas 3D printing, it would take a couple of hours.
Yeah.
So I don't think plastic 3D printing will ever replace injection molding, other than just for prototyping.
Although surely 3D printing will continue to get faster and more efficient, correct?
Yeah, for sure it will. But because it's so customizable and it's built to be that way, like you don't need a mold for any part that you make. um, you're sacrificing like speed of manufacturing for variety. So if you need to print like 50 different things, you can do that a lot faster than you can make 50 different injection molded things. But if you want to make 10,000 pieces of like a Lego, then injection molding can do that in less than a day, where 3D printing would take quite a while.
And you don't see that ever changing?
I don't think so.
No. Why not?
Just because the process of 3D printing, where it's laying things down layer by layer. So if you have like 500 layers of this part, it has to lay down each of those layers.
Mhm.
Whereas injection molding, you can make the entire part just by pumping plastic in really fast.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. You worked also on 3D modified 3D printers to improve the nuclear fuel rod industry. What on earth does that mean?
Yeah, so how they currently make nuclear fuel rods at the place that I'm working with is they have these giant quartz molds, and they have a bunch of uranium, just liquid uranium, and then they suck the uranium up into the quartz mold and wait for it to dry and then break it. Then they have a bunch of radioactive quartz that they can't reuse.
Yeah, that's awkward.
Yeah. So they wanted a way to make them without one-use molds, like single-use molds. And so they assigned a team, I think last year, to work on it, and they came up with continuous casting, which is where you have the metal and say like there was a bunch of metal in the roof here. If you poked a hole in it, it would just spill out as a liquid. But if you got the temperatures just right, it would solidify right at that hole and come out as a rod. And they do that in the steel industry. So they have a bunch of liquid metal, and then they cool it off like at the perfect temperature, and they can pull a rod out of that metal pot. And so what they came up with was they modified a 3D printer just to, because it has stepper motors that can move up and down precisely. And they put a cauldron on top so you can melt metal, and a block right below that cools, or is a like really finely tuned temperature controller. And then you take the rod and you put it into the block, and then you let the liquid metal fall onto the rod. And then as you're slowly moving down, the rod solidifies. And so then you don't need a mold, because you're just pulling a rod out of that block.
Got it. And then you've just got a radioactive 3D printer.
Yeah, and so you can reuse that as much as you want.
Got it.
Yeah.
Are there any problems with longevity in that 3D printer? Obviously dealing with something like uranium, which is not the nicest material.
For the setup we currently have, we don't use uranium. We just use a substitute metal. I think it's bismuth and tin. As far as upgrading that to support uranium, I don't think it would have any long-term effects. I mean, possibly, but they do it with steel, and I know steel's not radioactive, but yeah, those machines can be used for thousands of cycles. So
yeah. What's the process of getting liquid uranium?
That I don't know. I think you just take solid uranium and heat it up a lot.
Yeah, I would imagine that gathering that much solid uranium is somewhat difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah,
I'm not super involved on that side of the process. They just tell me what they need, and it's kind of like it's really secure, I guess. So like they'll tell me like what I told you. There's no non-disclosure agreement, but like I'm like, oh, why can't I do this? And they're like, you just can't.
You just can't.
Like that won't work.
Yeah.
I'm like, why won't it work? They're like, it just won't. Trust us.
Don't try.
Yeah.
Why do they use quartz for the molds?
That I don't know either. I think it just must work the best for what they're doing.
There you go.
Yeah.
As we kind of wrap up here, I always like to ask, what's your best piece of advice?
Have as much fun as possible, I guess. That's my philosophy.
There you go. Yeah. Where can people find you online?
I think I have some dead accounts on there, but I'm not online.
There you go.
Yeah.
Come start running in a forest and see if you find him.
Yes.
There you go.
I will be up in some random forest chasing a bear.
Yeah. Lots of fun.
Or
Thanks
racing.
for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Lots of fun. See you guys.